Shoyu ramen. Shoyu ramen is the foundation upon which modern Japanese ramen was built. While noodles arrived in Japan as early as the 1400s, they remained a niche food enjoyed primarily by monks and the upper class. Ramen as a popular culture did not truly begin until 1910, when a Tokyo shop called Rairaken opened its doors with Chinese chefs blending Cantonese noodle techniques with Japanese flavor sensibilities. That fusion produced what became known as Tokyo-style ramen, a clear, brown, soy sauce-flavored broth that drew enormous crowds and served thousands of bowls daily, triggering ramen's first major cultural boom. The word shoyu simply means soy sauce, and it defines both the color and the character of the broth. The stock is built by gently simmering chicken and pork bones alongside aromatics like ginger, garlic, and green onions, never boiling hard, which would cloud the liquid and roughen the flavor. A carefully prepared soy sauce tear, often blended with mirin, sake, and umami-rich ingredients like dried kelp or fish, is then introduced to create a broth that is salty and balanced, carrying a gentle sweetness beneath its deep savory surface. The noodles are typically thin, wavy, and slightly curly, a characteristic partly shaped by Tokyo's naturally alkaline tap water, which historically gave locally made noodles a springy, firm bite. Shoyu ramen represents a century of refinement and remains the elegance benchmark against which all other styles are quietly measured. Miso ramen. Miso ramen is one of the youngest of the canonical ramen styles, only achieving national popularity in Japan during the 1960s despite its roots in the previous decade. It was born in Sapporo, the capital of Hokkaido, Japan's northernmost main island, where winters are long, temperatures drop severely, and the local food culture has always gravitated toward warmth, richness, and sustenance. The origin story centers on Morito Omiya, a restaurant owner at a Sapporo establishment called a Jino Sanpei, who accidentally served a customer a sample of miso-flavored broth during a casual exchange. The reaction was enthusiastic enough that he spent years refining the idea into a formal menu item, and by the 1960s Sapporo miso ramen had spread across Japan as a celebrated regional specialty. The miso tear is stirred into a rich pork or chicken-based stock, producing a broth that is thick, opaque, and deeply savory in a way that no other ramen style quite matches. Depending on the miso used, white for a milder, nuttier result, red for something earthier and more intense, or a blended combination for the full Sapporo-style effect, the flavor can range considerably while always retaining that fermented soybean depth that coats the mouth and lingers. Thick, curly noodles are standard, their shape designed to grip and carry the dense broth in every bite. Classic Hokkaido toppings like corn, butter, and bean sprouts reflect the local agricultural landscape, and the addition of butter or lard serves the practical function of insulating the soup's surface heat against the freezing northern air. Tonkotsu ramen. Tonkotsu ramen is one of the most immediately recognizable and polarizing styles in the entire ramen canon, rich, opaque, almost milky white, and built on a broth produced by boiling pork bones at a vigorous, rolling boil for anywhere between 6 and 18 hours. That sustained, aggressive heat breaks down the collagen within the bones and emulsifies fat directly into the liquid, creating a broth so thick and viscous that it clings noticeably to a spoon. The flavor is deeply porky, intensely savory, and umami-forward in a way that feels almost overwhelming on first encounter and completely addictive shortly after. The style originated in Fukuoka on the southern island of Kyushu sometime in the late 1940s, with the most cited origin story involving a street food vendor selling the soup from a cart outside Hakata Station. The Hakata district became so thoroughly identified with this style of ramen that tonkotsu is still widely referred to as Hakata ramen today. The noodles are deliberately thin and straight, a choice that makes complete sense in context, because in a broth this heavy and rich, thick noodles would make each bowl almost impossible to finish. Thin noodles cut through the fat and keep the eating experience lighter than the broth alone would suggest. Traditional toppings are kept minimal: chashu pork belly, green onions, a strip of nori, sesame seeds, and pickled ginger on the side to cleanse the palate. Many Hakata shops operate on a kaidama system, allowing diners to order a fresh serving of noodles dropped into their remaining broth for a small surcharge, a practical innovation born from the speed and informality of the style's street food origins. Blue ramen. Blue ramen is the most visually striking entry in the modern neo-ramen movement, and the most famous version originates from a shop called Kipposhi in Japan, created by chef Koizumi. His concept was a clear chicken ramen dyed a vivid, luminous blue, inspired directly by the turquoise color of the Hawaiian Ocean, and when it went viral around 2017 it became an emblematic symbol of a new generation of ramen that prioritized visual identity alongside flavor. The color comes entirely from butterfly pea flower, a plant native to Southeast Asia whose petals produce a naturally vivid blue pigment when steeped in hot water. This ingredient has been used for centuries in Thai, Vietnamese, and Malay cooking, primarily in rice dishes and beverages, but its application in ramen broth was novel. The broth base must be a light, pale stock, typically a Shio or clean chicken style, because the blue pigment only registers clearly against a light background and would be completely lost in a darker Tonkotsu or Shoyu base. The flavor itself is clean and savory, focused on good quality chicken without distracting complexity, and the noodles take on a subtle blue tint during cooking. Chicken breast rather than pork belly serves as the primary topping, maintaining the lightness the style demands. One of the most celebrated aspects of blue ramen is a color change effect achieved by squeezing citrus juice, typically lemon or lime, into the bowl at the table, causing the blue to shift visibly toward purple or pink as the pH-sensitive butterfly pea pigment reacts to the added acidity. Shio ramen. Shio ramen is the most technically demanding and philosophically pure of all the recognized ramen styles. The word shio means salt, and the broth is seasoned with a carefully crafted salt tear rather than soy sauce or miso, producing a clear, often golden or near-colorless liquid that reveals everything about the quality of the stock beneath it. There is nowhere to hide. No fermented depth from miso to compensate for a thin base, no soy sauce umami to prop up a weak stock, just bones, water, aromatics, and salt in precise balance. Many ramen historians consider Shio the oldest of the four canonical styles, with the most commonly cited origin point being Hakodate, a port city in Hokkaido where Chinese traders introduced simple, salt-seasoned noodle soups during the late 19th century. Those early preparations are credited as the prototype from which all ramen eventually developed. The Hokkaido Shio tradition typically uses chicken or seafood as the stock base, producing a broth of near-complete transparency that showcases subtle, delicate flavors most other styles would overwhelm. Thin, straight noodles complement the lightness of the broth. Toppings lean toward white fish cake, thin pork slices, bamboo shoots, green onions, and a drizzle of flavored oil, chicken, sesame, yuzu, or shrimp, to add aromatic complexity without visual heaviness. The salt tear itself can be a sophisticated formulation, blending sea salt with kombu, dried fish, or fermented ingredients to create layered dimension. Eating a well-made Shio bowl slowly rewards patience, as subtle layers of flavor emerge gradually from its deceptively simple surface. Lemon ramen. Lemon ramen emerged from the wave of experimental and regional ramen development that accelerated across Japan during the 1990s and 2000s, when a generation of chefs began pushing deliberately beyond the four classical styles in search of new flavor territory. The defining element is citrus, real lemon juice, lemon zest, or both, incorporated directly into the broth or tear to introduce a bright acidity that feels almost unexpected within the context of traditional ramen. The base is invariably a Shio style or clean light chicken stock, because any heavier broth would fight the lemon rather than carry it, and the acidity needs open, uncluttered space to register properly. The result is a broth that is simultaneously savory and bright, fresh in a way that few other ramen styles attempt. It is one of the only versions where finishing a full bowl leaves the diner feeling lightened rather than weighted down. Some versions substitute or supplement lemon with yuzu, which introduces a more floral, distinctly Japanese citrus character to the same acidic principle. Chicken tempura is a common topping pairing, providing crunch and richness that works productively against the sharp broth. Poached chicken, bean sprouts, and fresh greens appear in other versions, all chosen to reinforce the clean, refreshing identity of the style. Medium-thin straight noodles are standard. Beyond flavor, the lemon performs several functional roles in the bowl. The heat of the broth intensifies the citrus aroma, the acidity reduces the perception of oiliness, and cold lemon slices placed directly in the bowl create a small but noticeable temperature contrast that keeps the eating experience dynamic from first bite to last. Tsukemen. Dipping ramen is a fundamentally different format from every other style on this list, serving the noodles and soup in completely separate vessels rather than combining them in a single bowl. The style was invented in 1961 by Kazuo Yamagishi, a celebrated Tokyo ramen chef, and its origin is genuinely accidental in the best possible way. Yamagishi observed kitchen workers dipping cold leftover noodles into hot soup so they could eat quickly while staying cooler during summer service, and he recognized the potential in what they were doing. He refined the concept, adjusted the broth accordingly, and put it on the menu, permanently changing what ramen could be. Because the dipping broth is never consumed in large volume the way a normal ramen broth is, it is deliberately formulated to be far saltier, richer, and more intensely flavored than anything you would drink from a bowl. The most common version uses a thick pork and fish-based broth with a heavy contribution from dried bonito or mackerel, creating something almost sauce-like in its concentration. Some shops serve the dipping broth at a rolling boil to compensate for the room temperature noodles, so the combined eating temperature remains satisfying. The noodles themselves are thick, substantial, and chewy, built to withstand repeated dipping without softening or disintegrating. Tsukemen opened an entirely new creative space for ramen chefs, allowing for flavor intensities that would be overwhelming in a conventional bowl format, and it has since evolved into a major and continually expanding subgenre of ramen culture. Tantanmen. Tantanmen is Japan's direct adaptation of the Sichuan Chinese classic dandan noodles, a dish of wheat noodles served in a spicy sesame and chili sauce topped with seasoned minced pork. When Chinese immigrants brought the dish to Japan, local cooks transformed it into a soup-based preparation, adding broth to what had been a relatively dry, intensely sauced dish and softening several of its sharper Sichuan edges in the process. The defining flavor combination of the Japanese version is sesame and spice. The broth is built on a chicken or pork stock base but draws its essential character from a tear of sesame paste, chili oil, and soy sauce, producing something nutty and warm with heat, and slightly thickened by the fat and protein of the sesame. Some versions lean so heavily into the sesame that the broth approaches the consistency and flavor of a peanut sauce thinned into soup form. Others emphasize the chili component to the point where the heat becomes the dominant sensation. Ground pork stir-fried with fermented chili bean paste is nearly universal as the primary topping, its savory, spicy richness floating across the surface of the broth and mixing into it gradually as the bowl is eaten. Tantanmen arrived in Japan during the 1950s through the network of Chinese restaurants in major cities, particularly around Yokohama's Chinatown, and spread through regional ramen shops over the following decades. The original Sichuan version prioritizes the numbing effect of Sichuan peppercorn and contains very little liquid. The Japanese adaptation is consistently milder, soupier, and more sesame-forward, a distinct dish that shares ancestry without being a copy. Mazesoba. Mazesoba, sometimes called Taiwan Mazesoba, is one of the most genuinely inventive ramen developments of the modern era, and its origin in 2008 at a small Nagoya shop called Menya Hanabi is one of the more charming accidental discoveries in recent food history. The shop owner was attempting to develop Taiwan ramen, a Nagoya specialty featuring spicy minced meat in soup, when he found himself unable to get the broth right. Facing a batch of well-seasoned meat he was about to discard, a part-time worker suggested placing it directly on top of noodles without any broth at all. That improvised solution created an entirely new ramen style that spread from Nagoya across Japan and eventually into broader Asian and American ramen culture within just a few years. Mazesoba contains no broth whatsoever. The flavor is delivered entirely through a tear, typically a soy sauce base enriched with lard or flavored oil and seasoned generously with garlic, that coats the thick, chewy noodles in a glossy, intensely savory layer when mixed at the table. Standard toppings include ground pork, menma bamboo shoots, nori, green onions, chili flakes, dried fish flakes, and a raw egg yolk that breaks during mixing and adds a custardy, binding richness to the entire bowl. Some versions incorporate cheese, whose fat plays a functionally similar role to the egg. Because there is no liquid to thin anything out, the noodles themselves become the textural centerpiece of the dish, thick, chewy, and substantial enough to carry the sauce without softening. Most shops complete the experience by offering a scoop of rice placed into the remaining sauce at the bottom of the bowl after the noodles are finished, ensuring that every last trace of tear is absorbed and eaten rather than left behind.